Yo, what's going on, family? It's your boy T coming back at y'all with another installment. And today's topic that I got for y'all is Marxism. What is Marxism? Now, we hear this term a lot in our country, but nobody necessarily breaks down what this term means. So today, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Because you know us, the common people, we're not the scholars or the politicians that hold the power in this country. We're just the average individuals. We're just the private citizens. And then when we hear this word, it's a lot of confusion behind it. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it this? Is it that? So today we're going to get a little understanding of this. So if you're familiar with my channel, you know exactly how I start this off. So let's get into it. Now, Marxism. Now, at face value, Marxism. Now, Marx is a root word in reference to a man named Karl Marx. And ism is in reference to, or ism denotes pertaining to. So now when you look at the word Marxism, it means pertaining to Marx or pertaining to Karl Marx. So now, who exactly is this guy? Who is this dude? You know? So before we actually read this article, what I want to do is grab something from Stanford University, their Encyclopedia of Philosophy. I'm not going to read this whole thing right here. I'm going to just, I'll leave that for y'all. Y'all could do that on your own time. But what I do want to read is a couple pieces of this real quick so we could get on with the understanding. So now, Karl Marx lived from 1818 to 1883, is best known not as a philosopher, but as a revolutionary whose work inspired the foundation of many communist regimes in the 20th century. It is hard to think of many who have had as much influence in the creation of the modern world. So now let's stop for a moment. So now, who is this guy Karl Marx and how did he influence the modern world? The modern world being in reference to the time space after the industrial age, if I'm not mistaken, because you see the time spirit, time span he lived. So after him, that would be the modern age, like the going into the technological age. So now let's jump ahead. Historical materialism. Marx's theory of history is centered around the idea that forms of society rise and fall as they further and then impede the development of human productive power. Marx sees the historical process as proceeding through a necessary series of modes of production characterized by class struggle, culminating in communism. Marx's economic analysis of capitalism is based on his version of the labor theory of value and includes the analysis of capitalist profit as the extraction of surplus value from the exploited proletariat. The analysis of history and economics come together in Marx's prediction of the inevitable economic breakdown of capitalism to be replaced by communism. All right, let's stop right here for a moment, y'all. Let's break this down, family. So now, that was a lot for us to process, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna help y'all out for a little minute, cause like I said earlier, we just the common people. We trying to get an understanding of these words. We trying to gain knowledge here. We don't necessarily have that scholarly knowledge as some people. So we're gonna do this together. So now, there's three things we got to take from this right now that we just read. Now, the first main thing, the key thing, historical materialism. This is Marx's theory of history. All right, cool. So now, what else? Skimming through, skimming through. All right, cool. It says that his economic analysis or the way that he preferred to do economics is based on his version of the labor theory of value, right? A combatant of capitalism, which would be known as communism. So these three things, historical materialism, labor theory of value, and communism, these are the main three things that is pertaining to Karl Marx, or I would say the foundation of Marxism, right? So now back to the subject. What is Marxism? Marxism is a method of socioeconomic analysis that uses materialist interpretation of historical development, better known as historical materialism. We just read about this, to understand class relations and social conflict, as well as a dialectical perspective to view social transformation. It originates from the 19th century it originates from the works of 19th century German philosopher Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. As Marxism has developed over time into various branches and schools of thought, there is currently no definitive Marxist theory. All right. So now, what did we get from this right here? Now, at face value, as it says, there's no single definitive Marxist theory. Plenty of schools of thoughts adopted his practices. Now, we got to be honest about that, but that's something we'll get into a little later. So now, it starts off by telling us that Marxism is a method of socioeconomics. So now, what is socioeconomics? If you've been following my channel, you would know how to decipher this word, socioeconomics. So now, when you see social economics, this is just basically saying social economics. So now, when we look at the word social, social is speaking of the people or the public, the community or society. That's what the word social means. So now, when you look at when you look at social economics, this is speaking of a state economics. That would have to be like a government system, you know, and a part of the system. Another aspect of their system is using, as we read earlier, historical materialism. So now, what exactly is historical materialism? Now, in the future, I'll do a video because this is something that I have to touch up a little more in depth, and it'll make this video very lengthy. So to sum it up, historical materialism is basically social constructs pertaining to history. So now, some might say, like that's a good thing. We as a society, we come together and form something that we all agree and understand pertaining to history. And it has to be, state enforced or government enforced. Pardon me, y'all, or government enforced. So, yeah, like I said, at face value, it seems as if, that's a good thing. But now, what many wouldn't know unless they studied a little more into the man called Marx, this historical materialism was in opposition to something called idealism. Remember, his system is supposed to be against capitalism. So now, as I said, historic materialism would be in opposition to idealism. So now, what is idealism? Idealism is using reality to divide objective and subjective. Some would say, you know, well, why can't you divide objective and subjective in a social construct? That could be done. What's the difference? What make these two so different? Now, what I would have to say is, in reality, like I said, I'll get into this deeper in another video, but social constructs are, to make it simple, based on opinions, like what somebody feels, like how they feel, or whatever they feel to be valid, pertaining to, as it says, class class relations and social conflicts. This would be using opinions, whereas in when idealism use reality to divide objective and subjective. Opinions would just solely be subjective. Now, if we was to put these two in you know, more understandable terms, we would have to say that historical materialism would be like opinions, and idealism would be like logic or reason. Basically, he wanted to use opinions to understand class relations and social constructs. Social conflict, as well as a dialectical perspective to view social transformation. So now, what do they mean by social transformation? Social transformation is basically governmental and historical transformation or revolution. Because remember, we read that this man called Marx was a revolutionary. So, with that in mind, what was this historical and governmental revolution? We just read historical materialism, using opinions versus logic and reason, or as they say, historical materialism versus idealism. This is how they catch you in the colleges, so to say. They use these big, sophisticated words when in reality they have simple meanings. So now, what would be the governmental aspect of this social transformation? As we read previously, it would be his theories of communism being better than capitalism. And one way he tried to use social transformation or governmental revolution in this aspect with communism versus capitalism is his labor theory of value. So now, normally in a capitalist society or in capitalism, supply and demand would determine wages and prices of things. How? It would be competition and negotiation. Now, if you watch my previous videos, you would know that in capitalism, you have what's called the free market system. Now, in this free market system, you have private individuals who own the means of production, or let's just say business. You have private individuals who are in charge of their own businesses, and they make their own rules and they set their own prices, but it's due to what's called supply and demand. Supply and demand is what shows us what value is or how much things cost. So now the competition and the negotiation is the freedom in a capitalist society. Let me explain this a little further. Now, you will have multiple private owners. Now, all of them are in competition with each other for consumers. Now, what they do is they supply the consumers, they demand. Now, when a business decides to lower its prices, then another business, in turn, that business will possibly get more consumers because who would want to go to a place that has higher prices than another place? Now, this same effect also weighs into wages, whereas if one employer paid more, you can have the freedom to leave your employer and go to that employer if they hire you. Now, you can also negotiate your wages. You don't have to have a set price. If one business owner didn't want to pay you a wage that you felt was reasonable for your work, you don't have to take that job. You could go somewhere else where they're willing to pay you a reasonable wage. Now, all of this is what we call supply and demand. Now, Karl Marx, and Marxists, they didn't like this. What they feel is that the private owner can exploit workers through this negotiation and competition. How? By monopolizing. If private owners monopolize, then that would essentially exploit the consumers, and if they set certain wages amongst each other, that can also exploit workers. But that's another conversation and another topic that I'll probably go into in the future. But for now, we're going to stick with the topic at hand. Now, like I said, Marx, he didn't like this. He felt as if the private owner could exploit the workers and the consumers. His version of this labor theory of value was based on, well, his ideas was that wages should be based on the overall value of production, the production of goods and services. Now, how exactly would you know the overall value of production of these goods and services without having supply and demand first, knowing what people want so you can supply it? His answer was communism. Now, what exactly is communism? Now, here we have the University of North Carolina. This is a part of the European studies. It's an article that somebody wrote, not too sure, but I like what they write in here. You could find this yourself and read the whole thing. But for now, I just want to touch up real quick on what is communism. And in the future, I'll do a more in-depth video, but I just want to touch the surface of what communism is. So now, what is communism? Communism is a political ideology and type of government in which the state owns the major resources in society or in a society, including property, means of production, education, agriculture, and transportation. Basically, communism proposes a society in which everyone shares the benefits of labor equally and eliminates the class system through redistribution of income. All right, let's stop right here for a moment. Now, what exactly is this saying? So now, at face value, communism is a political ideology and type of government. All right, cool. Now, when we see in the next sentence, it says basically communism proposes a society in which everyone shares the benefit of labor equally and eliminates the class system through redistribution of wealth. That sounds real familiar if you ask me. That sounds real familiar. Redistribution of wealth benefits, people sharing the benefits of labor equally. This is basically the labor theory of value that Karl Marx was speaking of. So now let's continue reading on. The father of communism, Karl Marx. Now let's stop for a minute. Karl Marx, as it reads, is the father of communism. So if Karl Marx is the father of communism, that must mean that communism is Marxism, or Marxism is communism? What? He is the father of communism. So in order for someone to say that they're a Marxist or they pertain to Karl Marx, they must also be a communist. All right? Let's continue reading. A German philosopher and economist proposed this new ideology in his Communist Manifesto, which he wrote with Friedrich Engels in 1848. There go this guy again. The manifesto emphasized the importance of class struggle in every historical society and the dangerous instability capitalism created. All right, now let's stop for a moment. So now, as we just read, this guy is the father of communism. He is basically the founder, the founding father. There we go. And he authored, along with this guy, Frederick Engels, the Communist Manifesto. So communism is his ideology. This is where we got communism from. So now, who are these people in America calling themselves Marxists? Or who are the Marxists? Because I mean, if you're a Marxist, that means you're a communist. And I mean, I'm more than sure a lot of us know who are the communists. Like, for example, it says Karl Marx, a German philosopher. So when you hear about Germany, you think Nazi Germany, communism, um, Russia, Stalin, you know, communism, the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, right? And as I said, communism is a political ideology and type of government. So who are these people today talking about they are Marxists or communists today in our country? I have a video actually of somebody in an interview openly saying that they are a trained Marxist, that they are a Marxist under a different banner. It's not necessarily open that they are Marxists, but they indeed are Marxists. And by definition, that would have to mean that they're communists. So let's get to the video. And no, I ain't talking about this guy. He's the guy doing the interview. The person that say we are trained Marxists is Patrice Cullors, co-founder of Black Lives Matter. So now let's hear what she have to say.
I think that the criticism is helpful. I also think that it might. I think of a lot of things. The first thing I think is that we actually do have an ideological frame. Myself and Alicia in particular are trained organizers. We are trained Marxists. We are.
What did she just say, family? The co-founder of Black Lives Matter.
Things. The first thing I think is that we actually do have an ideological frame. Myself and Alicia in particular are trained organizers. We are trained Marxists. We are.
Now you don't gotta take it from me, family. She said it herself. We are trained Marxists. Karl Marx, we follow his ideologies, which is communism, And she didn't just say we believe in communism, she said we are trained Marxists right here in America. So where are these people getting trained to be Marxists? Now, I want to actually show you guys something that might be a little surprising to some, might not. Alright, family, this is what I want to graph for y'all real quick. From the National Review. Now, this article is entitled Coming Home from College by Dennis Prager from Prager University. Now, this starts off saying, when you send your child to college, you are playing Russian roulette with their character. Now, whoa, what exactly does he mean? Isn't college such a prestigious institution in America? But Dennis Prager from Prager University is saying when you send your child to college, you are playing Russian roulette with their character. So now the article reads, every year, many thousands of American parents find that their son or daughter they sent to college has been transformed by college into a leftist. For left-wing parents, this may be a blessing, but for parents who are not leftist, not to mention those who are conservative, it is often painfully jolting. Now, what exactly is he talking about? In our country, lately, the philosophy world has been taken over by socialists or the socialist agenda. The numbers or the statistics of socialists versus capitalists professors in our colleges today are very unbalanced. If I'm not mistaken, I'm not reading any direct source, don't quote me on this, but if I'm not mistaken, socialist professors outweigh the capitalist professors on average across the board in our country, and I believe like a 6 or 7 or 2 or something to that effect. And that's actually a little dangerous when you go to college and you get a subjective understanding of reality when it comes to philosophy. Most of these people in college are giving these students uh, information on men like Spinoza, some stuff from other men who have come from mainly leftist ideologies when it comes to philosophy in the Enlightenment era. They reject idealism and they promote historical materialism in the colleges. And this is basically, taking inserts from what is called the Communist Manifesto. It's just that here in America, we don't call it communism. We call it Marxism, or we call it socialism, you know, or leftist, left wing. These are the names that we give it in our country. And this is actually becoming dangerous. Let me read just a little bit more. It is jolting because their beloved child now holds America in contempt, prefers socialism to capitalism, or Marxism, or communism instead of capitalism, regards all white people and police as racist, believe the Bible, Christianity, and Judaism are not only nonsense, but dangerous nonsense. No longer believe that men and women are inherently different, or even that male and female objectively exist. Is uninterested in getting married and having children. Believes the president of the United States is a fascist, which is actually illogical because fascism is left wing, but that's something that we'll get into later. As are all those who voted for him, and supports the suppression of speech that he or she regards as hate speech. So now, what is this saying? You know, basically, children are going to college and they're coming back and they don't like the Constitution anymore. They don't even teach about the Constitution. Most people don't even understand the Constitution in this country. And why is that? Because the re-education that's going on in these colleges, instead of learning the principles and the foundations of this country, they're learning the theories of Karl Marx, which is communism. They want that redistribution of wealth. You know, they want everybody to share the benefits of labor equally. They want to eliminate the class system. You know, these are the things that they're learning, that they're teaching in school. The re-education. This is what is meant when Dennis Prager says that you are playing Russian roulette with your children's character if you send them to college. You know. Now, some might say that that type of stuff don't go on. People have a choice. Well, I mean, not if you're under communism or socialism. Now, let's see what happens in a capitalist. Sorry. Let's see what happens in a socialist, as they would claim, or a communist or a Marxist society when it comes down to people not people not transforming themselves to this ideology of historical materialism that they're teaching inside the schools. Now, this is what we end up with, family. Re-education camps. Don't you hear people shouting for re-education in this country? Now, this is coming from the CCP, built by the Chinese Communist Party. Right? They over there re-educating Muslims and other Turkic-speaking people, you know, to conform to their historical materialism, whatever social constructs they want to pertain to history, the opinions that they want in history, versus idealism or logic, realism, dividing objective and subjection using reality. That's basically what you have in a socialist, communist, Marxist society. Why? Because it's total state control. Once you give the state total control, they enforce their will. And the people accept it because it sounds good to them. They want that redistribution of wealth. They want everybody to share the benefits of labor equally. They don't want a class system. They want a classless system. So yeah, just to wrap it up, the understanding of Marxism. Now be safe out there, family.